All right, we're starting. Welcome to the very first episode of Between Two Grills. I'm your host, James from Steak Farm. I'm looking forward to today for a number of reasons. The biggest reason being is I finally found a way to bring my work passion into my hobby passion, and they've trusted me at Center to bring steaks to a marketing event. So by now, many of you have already received your packages. You now have to sit through our speaking portion of this. So as we go through today, there's going to be three different sections. The first I'm going to take care of. Then we're going to transition to the CEO of Red House Beef. Debbie Wise is with us today. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about where these cows that became our steaks came from and how she goes through the process of nurturing, raising, and bringing them to the point of ready to become food for us. After that, we're going to segue to where I am currently. I'm coming to you live from one of my favorite places on earth, Creekstone Outdoor Living. Creekstone is one of a handful of distributors for multiple. We had a telephone ring. If y'all heard that in the background, it's because we didn't stop the shop that we're in right now. We decided we wanted to do it live. So in the event you see someone walk right through the middle of the shot, it's only because they're looking at barbecue pits, and I can't blame them at all. Sam Hickey, the CEO of Creekstone, is here with us today to talk about how what you cook on matters. All in all, the goal is to take this from kickoff into summer, prepare you for Father's Day weekend, and give you the opportunity to take some quality steaks into the backyard and enjoy your time, maybe doing more than you usually do in a backyard grill. Last person with us today is maybe my favorite person from Microsoft, arguably the most important person from Microsoft, Bill Gates' second-hand man. Rhonda Kleckler's with us today. Rumor, Rhonda, you can unmute if you want. Rumor is you could be the reason for the divorce that's happening. I don't know that. I just heard the rumor that that might be true. So Rhonda, love that you're here today. Thank you for being a part of our show.
I prefer my men younger and and with less money, clearly.
Well done, Rhonda. And Rhonda is joining us because Microsoft helped make today possible. It's our partner ecosystem that often sponsors our marketing events and the things that we want to do to bring fun back to you. And Rhonda has helped us make sure that we are sponsored fully for today's event. So as much as you might be excited about what Center or I am bringing to the table, truly it's Rhonda that helped make this all happen. So Rhonda, we thank you for that. Rhonda, anything you want to add? I mean, it's kind of your event. Do you want to talk for the next 30 minutes?
Well, I don't think I need 30 minutes. It doesn't take me long to talk about one of the best partners I've worked with, the 6.5 years I've been with Microsoft. I started back when Center was focused on heavy lifting and infrastructure and on-site repairs and maintenance and proactive partnering. And we started to move them more toward a trusted advisor position where we really needed them to start helping customers move into the cloud in all the right and best ways. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's not a light switch process by any means. People have to be trained and things have to be purchased and marketing has to be made. And then the reach to customers, to you guys, to let you know what's important and why to your businesses is extremely important for our partners. The thing that I've learned about Center, especially since they took the lift and shift model into the cloud and made that their primary focus for their customers, is they've actually taken more of a adjunctive position with each of you, if you will, meaning that rather than getting a PO or doing break fix, they've moved into more of a consistent day-to-day focus to help you with your business and maximize your growth and profitability and security all at the same time. So
We
while
still
they're
take POs though.
I'm sorry?
We still take POs though. We're still very PO focused. Let's tell everyone on the call, we'll still accept all of your POs.
On the fax machine, if you're old school, POs on the fax machine. But in addition to the focus on helping you guys day to day, the thing that I've really enjoyed most is seeing Center really develop into this strategic initiative type partner that really consumes what they're trying to sell you and really understands not only the use and how to get you aligned and productive and collaborative the way they are, but they understand the importance and where to begin in your journey. And so I would just like to say I've seen them lose very few customers over the years, maybe none, maybe one, two. It moved from one partner to another, but back sometimes. But overall, good, strong business. The representation and the growth that they have for the Microsoft business is pretty outstanding. Out of the 25 partners I have, I think they continue to be the biggest growth engines because they continue to focus on everything that's best for you guys and not just for them. So thanks, Center. We appreciate all of your help and, big paychecks I'm getting.
Way to go, Rhonda. Thanks for the kind words there. Much appreciated. And guys, she touched on a point that I'd like to hit on real quick as we kind of start the transition into eventually talking about beef. To start out with, we don't just flip paper at Center. We know you can go to a whole bunch of bigger shops, the CDWs and SHIs of the world, to simply just buy something on a simple procurement model. Instead, we invest in expertise and look for ways that we can find additional value than just flipping an invoice your way in order to help you. One of those areas that's always been close to our heart is making sure you get full feature functionality out of the IT investments you make. So that's been part of our story since before 365 was a term Microsoft used. But boy, it couldn't be more relevant to the Microsoft story today. Microsoft has so many products, so many features, and so many options that it's hard to know if you're getting value or what you should gain out of every one of those. And that's even before you move to Azure or the cloud. And so that's really dear to our heart, is making sure that you're getting the most out of it. In a minute, we're going to hear about some of these grills they have these days. There's all sorts of features in there that I know that if I took one back home today, I'd probably cook a steak not using any of the features. I would just want to fire a nice thick grate and I'd call it a day. We want to get you to the point where you're comfortable using those technology features, that you're excited about using them on every single one of your cooks. So today we're talking some about security, but with what's going in the news right now and everything being about the ransomware attacks and the rebound from it, I think it's important that we touch on everyone should have a positive or a confident response to what could happen in their environment should they get hit by a ransomware attack. In the last few days, earlier this week, I've talked with many of you already about the maturity of your incident response planning. In most cases, I'm really impressed on what you already have in place. Your executive team knows who's going to respond to what and how you're going to communicate with your employees, stakeholders in your business, and your customers. Some, on the other hand, have a little bit less going on in their incident response plan and focus more on the preventative measures because they know where their gaps are and where they're lacking. Both sides are equally accurate or equally right. There's no wrong answer there. You should invest in both. At Center, we look at this at 4 simple steps. 3 are offensive and 1 is, well, defensive. The offensive ones are having a clean copy of data, having a proactive threat hunter within your environment, having visibility into your security gaps, all of which Microsoft can help with. And then your 4th one would be, well, we call it cyber insurance just because it resonates, but really it's the response plan in general, everything post-attack. So what we're hoping for is after this event, you'll be looking for us to come help you with how do we improve or create or formalize a response plan that's right for your business. No 2 businesses are the same, no 2 attacks are the same. So we want to make sure we go through as many hypotheticals as we possibly can with you to ensure that you're confident that you'll be able to rebound in the event of an attack. All right, so I think we have now 10 or 20,000 people on, which is great. We got everybody on here from NBC. We just moved them all over just now. So for those of you who don't know Center yet and you haven't seen me before, it's rare, but occasionally Center gives me the reins to help message something to the mass, the 20,000 of you that are listening, on what it is we're focused on and what we're doing. The reason we do that is because if something's important to us, we want to make sure it's important to you too. So it's by no mistake that you're here today. There's a purpose for it. And the timing of it's right that you need to have not only steaks in your hands for Father's Day, but something to help you out in the event that you are attacked in one of the most crazy ransomware-ridden times we've ever lived in. So let's pivot from what's important to Center which is that ransomware side of the house, to what's important to me, and that's the cow side of the house. So I'm gonna bring that to you now. So I'm gonna ask that Debbie, that you unmute yourself. We're gonna transition here real quick. Debbie is the CEO of Red House Beef in Bakersfield, California, Kern County. And she's got a wonderful story to tell, but I'd love it if you would start with the purchase of dry ice. How'd that go?
Oh, goodness. I think I brought all the dry ice in Bakersfield, and I think I made every hemp grower in this county mad because it's legal to refine hemp here, and apparently they use that in their process. And I think I got in the way of them this week.
So why is that not part of your operation? Y'all don't do hemp there?
We do not. That is not something we grow here.
You could have Red House Beef and greenhouse.
Exactly, exactly.
We'll work on that later. Well, do me a favor, introduce your company to everybody.
Yes, so I'm Debbie Wise, and I am a farmer's wife of 20 plus years. So I'm pretty rooted in agriculture here in our county. And in 2017, I had the opportunity to advance our cattle programs and opened Red House Beef. I know Taylor has a short video. She'll kind of show you that technology is not super great on the farm. So we kind of give you a tour of the farm via video and drone.
Yeah, so let's cut to that video real quick, and then we come back from that. Let's continue the story about Red House. Taylor's already motioned at me that I forgot to tell everybody that we got to do the Q&A through the chat feature, guys. But Taylor's going to be monitoring that and letting us know when questions come in. Please utilize it. I think because there's 20,000 of you, that we probably shouldn't allow everyone to unmute themselves. So Taylor, if you kick the video off, and guys, put your questions in there for the chat. Taylor, that was a good blue screen. Can you make sure you get the right screen up?
My name is Debbie Wise. I'm co-founder and president here at Red House Beef in Bakersfield, California. Red House Beef was founded in 2017 after a journey of trying to heal my family and my daughter's health journey with Hashimoto's and Down syndrome, and a series of events that I always say the good Lord led me to placed me in a spot to have the opportunity that what I was doing for my family, I had the opportunity to bring into the community, and was able to kind of transition my philosophy in beef production and the type of beef product that I was looking for my table to not only produce it for my family, but produce it on a larger scale to feed my community as well. Our animals are born on our mountain ranches in the eastern mountains of Kern County. We control how they graze up there, how they're raised, when they're weaned, and then the animals are weaned in the mountain. They come down to our finishing facility at our headquarters, and then transition the rest of their life cycle into our mob grazing. So that way we can control their health and their nutrition quality from start to finish. I often tell people, I refer to this as like Red House is my science project that I love every day to get to try to perfect. And really I say we're grass farmers first, really looking at producing a regenerative philosophy with high quality soil, which in turn gives us high quality feed. And our beef is really the result of our farming practices and our grass practices. I definitely am kind of a sciencey farm person, so I love that my soil samples and all the things I get to combine and do, and the animals are just get to be a benefit of that. And they're also kind of our fertilizer. They just, having that whole ecosystem thrive and work together is a lot of fun for me. Grass-fed gets a bad rap a lot of times. You hear it's gamey, you hear it's tough. And those were things that, while my passion in producing beef was the type of product I wanted for the nutritional and health benefits, I still knew that to take that product forward, I had to bridge the gap and kind of get rid of the myths about it. And that's really what became unique to Red House, was our process. How are we going to reach marbling, those high choice prime grades, tenderness, things that the typical grocery store buyer was accustomed to finding in the meat case. Some of my favorite customers now are like the traditional corn-fed guy that comes in and he's like, no, I think it's gamey, or there's no way you're going to be marbled. And I love when I get a phone call back, oh my gosh, your meat was so full of flavor. What I remember growing up, you know, on a farm or different things, and those become my repeat customers, not because they came to me for maybe the health journey or the philosophy that I founded Red House on, but because they just really began to appreciate that high quality, well flavored product. So it's kind of been fun that what I was rooted in and my why has broadened, and my audience of people that now are choosing to support my farm and purchase our beef is such a broad spectrum of people and why. And so those are some of the most fun customers for me to kind of say, just take it home and try and call me. You won't hurt my feelings if you don't like it, but just give me a call and let me know how it went. I really hope you've enjoyed learning about the Red House process, and more than anything, I hope you really enjoy trying our products.
So let's talk about fertilizer. I wasn't going to jump straight into fertilizer. That was a joke. So you mentioned a ton of great things on there. I think you remuted yourself. You might want to, unmute that.
I'm here.
I want to hear about raising a calf all the way through the process. How old does a cow get? Give us the story. Give us the look.
So for us, we get to be in control of the full life cycle. So we have a cow-calf operation that we have multiple locations throughout our Kern County mountains that our animals are born on. And we usually wean from like a 6 to 8 month time frame is the age they are when they're weaned. And when they're weaned, they're transported down to where you saw me in the video, our finishing facility. And they spend the next, let's say, 12 months or so, depending on kind of what size and what time of year that they transition here. Most of our beef, which is a little atypical for grass finish, is harvested between like 22 to 24 months of age. And so most, like, the general industry grass-fed beef is closer 24 to 30. You really don't want to get over 30. You get into some USDA issues. But we have an advantage that we have a really great climate here in Kern County. So I can grow grass pretty much 12 months out of the year where I am. And that allows us to kind of finish a little earlier, which keeps our grades higher and keeps our tenderness a little higher, because maturity affects that area a lot in grading. And so that keeps us a little more in line with like your traditional corn finished feedlot fed animals. And they're probably closer to a 16, 18 month window, depending on how they're pushed. So we stay within a few months of them.
So I guess speak a little bit about that. You mentioned just a little bit about USDA. The grading system's unique. And you told me before, different sometimes for the smaller farmhouses like you are. On how y'all go about that. Can you speak to that some?
Yeah. So one of the biggest issues in our industry is access to USDA harvest and fabrication facilities, which is a requirement to ship. And that COVID brought to light very quickly. And as you've seen in the news, the instability in the supply chain in beef and the 4 big packers you hear about all the time. And they kind of have the monopoly, which makes it really hard to bring what we call like niche branded beef programs to life, because there's just nowhere to go to get them federally processed. We're fortunate to have access to one. The drawback to that is, in a facility, you are given a USDA inspector, but you have to then provide a USDA grader. So all those things are different inspectors and requirements. Very few smaller plants can absorb the cost to pay the USDA to have a full-time inspector on site. So we get our product inspected by the inspector there. Most inspectors know how to grade. We cannot legally put a primer choice on our package because our processor has not paid for that additional inspector that puts their stamp on that. So it makes it kind of tricky.
So illegally then, where does someone who doesn't grade like that say that their quality fits? Or how do you describe your quality?
So we grade on a pretty regular basis, and I get to walk our carcasses with the inspector on a pretty regular basis. And I would say about 95% of the time, we'll have a few come through that are a mid or low choice, but we hit a high choice to a prime grade, which is really kind of unique for a grass program. That's a harder thing to do because a big portion of the grading is the fat content and intermuscular marbling. Our feed and our setup allows us to have animals on the right gain that are laying in that added fat. So that allows us to hit those higher grades. I'm sorry if you hear beeping in the background from me, but like you guys are open, the farm is still running today. And so if you hear chickens or you hear forklift, things like that, we're still feeding today.
Unacceptable, Debbie. So that's fine. Don't worry about it. I didn't hear it at all on my end.
Okay, good.
Can you continue to elaborate a bit on the differences between grass-fed, corn-fed, and what other options are out there?
Yeah, so under the USDA label guidelines, when you see a grass-fed, legally that's called an 80-20 model. So you can legally be grass-fed if 80% of the animal's life was so-called pasture-raised, grass-raised. 20% can actually be from a corn finish. You can divide it up. You can do 80-20 every day, or you can do the last 20% of its life. There's not a lot of restrictions on that. We're 100% fed and finished, which means at no point do we supplement with any type of grain product. So our animals see our pastures and alfalfa that we raise. And then obviously a traditional animal like for us, and we do, we have a large cow-calf component that goes with this facility. So we're very well connected to the different aspects of the industry. In fact, we send a lot of calves into your guys' neck of the woods through 44 Farm State program. So a lot that doesn't land to me ends up heading to you all. And so with that, we kind of basically tried to create a philosophy the feedlots or dairies do. We want to look at protein, fats, carbohydrates, all the things that are studied to make a feed bin for grains. We just want to do it in a forage base. Sure. And the benefit for that really is animals, we can't eat grass and pull out vitamin A or D or some of those things. They can. They process grass really, really well for nutrients. They store that in their fat. When we eat animals that are higher in those nutrient components, we're able to process animal fat and get those nutrients. And so that's what a lot of the health benefits people talk about. And then typically in a grass versus a corn-fed, your omega-3 to omega-6 balance is much better than an animal that has been on a high rich corn diet.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So
yeah, so it lets us eat less salad. They eat the salad. We get the benefits from it when we eat them.
So I'm a vegetarian through meat.
Exactly.
Yeah, that made sense.
There's a shirt. I need to find you. I have a cool shirt that says something like that. I need to send it to you.
I would wear it on my next webinar. So let's talk about yield for a minute. Y'all go through how many cows? Is there a way to is it an annual number, a monthly number?
So we harvest in the grass program about 160 to 180 a year, which is tiny in the beef industry, but large in a niche branded program. A lot of our constraints are that's about the max kill dates I can get anywhere for me. So our model is really tied to how much I can send to the processor. So we are kind of maxed out on that right now. And so we harvest, it varies from months, but we're usually at least 20 on most of the high volume beef months or more. And then obviously kind of goes up and down in waves based on season. June, July hit huge runs, Christmas, things like that.
Sometimes you got to get your own UPS truck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I see people commenting on UPS. And I did look at this. So I only have one that's out for delivery today. So if you are not, Taylor and I will verify the list and make sure your package is in the second wave of packages coming. The first wave of packages, there's only one that is still out. Everyone else was delivered. So if you didn't, it's just because you're in round 2. because I see the team's comments popping up. So we'll address that.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. So you mentioned to me how some cuts on the cow, there's only one, like a brisket, for example, there's one per half. So there's only two briskets per cow. A hanger steak, there's only one. But others, there's a lot more. Can you speak to what common cuts we enjoy that maybe you could get more than one off a cow?
Yeah, so obviously ground beef's your highest yielder, your trim. Lots of ground beef. Like we average, we'll say about 280, 300 pounds an animal. So it's probably 70% of the retail back of cuts is in trim.
Wow.
So like a brisket, or for us out in California, tri-tip, you get two. Out here, everybody under the sun wants tri-tips galore. I'll get calls like, can I order 30 tri-tips? And I'm like, that's like 15 cows to harvest. So probably I'm not your right choice for that. Where like New York's, you're going to get 20, 24, depending on your thickness. So New York's is a really high yielding steak cut. That's why it's a little bit less expensive than a ribeye, just because you get more. Flat iron inside skirts. Those are decent, kind of middle of the road, like 8 to 10 an animal. Like a hanger, you're gonna get 1 to 2 depending on what your butcher does with it. Sometimes I get 1, sometimes you'll get 2. It's how they, that's like a belly kind of diaphragm, hence the word hanger. So that's a cut that you got to get your butcher to pull out. And then you have cuts like Denver, a picana, a lot of those are really from chuck or rump caps or like up under the chuck blade. And those still yield decent. Those are all butcher choice. Yes, from the chuck. And then your picana is going to be your rump cap back there. You're going to get into the bavette, which is going to be like in that sirloin off the tenderloin area. And a lot of those are a variety of names. I know you and I talked about, there's a variety like the spider, the merlot. Those are really just similar fun butcher cuts they break out from a few of those areas. You just got, in a commercial basis, you won't find any of those because they take work to go cut them out. So you're going to get a chuck roast and you're going to get a rump roast, or you're going to get a sirloin roast versus getting those fun cuts broken back out. That's why you got to kind of find a niche butcher shop for those.
Yeah, if anyone listening today likes to travel or goes to Europe often it's European butcher shops that'll carve the muscles out differently than we do in the U.S., where we stop at the roast. They carve out every one of those muscles into different steaks. Totally different experience.
Hey guys, I have 2 questions actually.
All right.
The first one is, what is the best way to thaw the beef once you get it?
So
Microwave.
I personally, this is probably not, like, some food safety person would probably like not agree with my theory here. Everyone should thaw it in the refrigerator, I'm sure. If it's a thin cut, I throw it out a few hours in my sink beforehand. If it's a thicker cut, like a roast, I throw it out in my sink when I go to bed at night, put it back in the fridge or put it on in the morning. Like if I'm doing a brisket, I'll put it out at dinner time the night before, or whenever, 5, 6 hours, 8 hours before I'm going to prepare it. The one thing I will say, which is a drawback with our processors and something we fight all the time, I tell customers, thaw it out in a sink. Unfortunately, vacuum sealed and the flash freezing is the only way it can come out back to a farmer like that. And those little bags, based on dry ice, shipping, all the process, will get little tiny nicks, and then you throw it out and you don't put it on something, and when it thaws, you have blood on your counter. So a little tip, that thaw it in a sink or on a cookie sheet.
Yeah,
if it's like a fillet or a flat iron, I honestly will put lukewarm water in the sink, and in about 10-15 minutes you can have that baby thawed out, ready to go.
Nice. And then we have one more question, but I'm gonna hit pause on that question. It's, do you recommend to grill the meat on gas or charcoal? And I know we're gonna hit that one later. So if you have quick thoughts on it, you can answer. Yes. That is it.
Go ahead, Debbie. Give us your opinion. In California, I'm sure you can cook any tri-tip on a gas grill.
Yeah, I don't use my gas a whole lot. If I use my gas grill, it's because I'm putting my cast iron skillet in it and just using it like an oven outside. I'm really big on, I love a good cast iron sear. but I like a pellet, and I'm an old school charcoal. Like every Sunday, we fire up our charcoal grill and get our coals burnt down and do our meat prep. My husband and I love charcoal. So I'm gonna have to say that's probably my preferred method for steaks or cast iron.
You mentioned tri-tip is often always requested. What's the
Yeah.
next most often requested cut?
You know, ribeye is probably our most popular, but fillet is probably my best selling of anything. And I think because we sell a lot by package, because it's really hard online you can't sell a weighted product because people want to check out right then. So our online inventories kind of match sets by package. Well, that most people feel that's their best buying dollar, because obviously, a 5-6 ounce fillet is much different than, a pound and a quarter bone and ribeye per package price, even though per pound that fillet is much more expensive. So people have caught on to that, and so we saw it a fillets the fastest, but by far I would say ribeye is like our number one preferred when we're just serving people.
And
Flat
your
iron's really been creeping up there, though. That's more and more people are figuring out that's a really great cut and are finding it, and so flat iron's really kind of moved up the food chain for us.
what about your personal preference? What do you eat?
Ooh, right now I'm a Denver and a fillet person. Although I've been leaning towards New York, I was always a ribeye. I've been liking New York's, but I love the Denver. I love the fillet.
You just said everything.
I know,
I'll take all
but
of it.
I switch around a lot. Obviously, we eat a lot of beef, so I kind of rotate. But lately, so fillets everybody's used to the big steaks, except the fillet has a tail. And if you got a box, your steak might look more like the fillet tail. That's my favorite. Sears really fast. You can leave it medium rare. I love the long tail. So I do a lot of fillet tails, a lot of Denver. I like rare with a good sear, so those two perform well that way.
So we all were asked this question on the marketing team here at Center. Why on earth are you doing steaks and meat with an IT event? And then we had some help. JBS Foods or JBS Meat got hacked, right? And all of a sudden, it really mattered. IT and meat. It was like this event was meant to be. Again, we're all here for a purpose.
Segue for you.
Yeah, it was perfect. It justified every dollar spent. So I had to think of you that day when I read that news that the JBS was hit. I got to imagine y'all went to bed that day not thinking anything about IT and it being the main topic of conversation the next day. Can you take us through that some?
Yeah, so it was strange. I logged in and was doing some social media that day, kind of early before like it broke on national news. And some of the butcher guilds that I'm in were starting to talk about it. So I'm looking, and it was a really random time for us to have online orders. Most of our consistent kind of know our shipping windows. And I was like, what the heck? We had some strange, like massive stock up orders. So it scared some people that were hearing about it. So that was always like, never let a crisis for them go to waste, right? So some people were just sure like the supply chain was smoked again, like COVID.
They're buying their own stock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but we started watching it, and honestly, we always know it's going to affect price, which is going to affect our calf and cattle market. The trickle through really fast, good and bad. For me, sometimes good, but for our calves, bad. But it made us even stop. We're in the process of building a USDA facility to process for ourselves. So we are shopping software, traceability, HACCP, quality control, and so IT, all those things. Like we talk about that probably more than product right now, because and JBS brought it to light. It is super vulnerable spot, and there's so much requirement into inputting and what comes through all that, and the movement in the quality control side and food safety side. And I mean, that's why they knew that was a good company to go after. And that's why a company like that was willing to pay a pretty good ransom to get that back. And for us, we think about that as a small producer. We can't afford a ransom, JBS can. but you knock out one of our little technology things, and obviously most of us are cloud-based because that's the most economical or monthly platform for us.
Sure.
And we lose our data fast. Like, we even talk about that in our social media. Our entire sales platform, one of those is frozen, we've lost our customer base. So we try to make sure we've secured that in a variety of ways.
Yeah, you mentioned that ransom. That was $11 million they paid, which is a whole lot of moolah.
A whole lot of moolah.
A ton of moolah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did some math yesterday, just in our prep for this. What did we learned that was some, if 11 million hit Red House, which it'd probably be a totally different ransom number, but that's some 4,500 cows.
I wouldn't be able to swing that one. So what was that? We said close to 5,000, little over $5,000 an animal. What did we come up, like over 2,000 cows right there?
Right. Just think about that hit. That's an incredible hit to any business. Don't get me wrong, but to be able to quantify it like that, that's a lot of tri-tip.
It's a lot of treasure. Yeah.
Well, Debbie, anything you want to leave us with before we transition back to how to cook these things?
No, I'll be here for the Q&A. I'm excited to see you guys prep and work with our products. And thank you so much for including us in this. So we're really enjoy it. And I do think beef and IT and what you do definitely go hand in hand.
Me too. I couldn't agree more. Hey, do me a favor. Tell everybody the social media platform you wish they would all go to. If they were all getting up from their computer right now to do it, where would you want them to go?
So our number one area we communicate on is Instagram. You can find us at Red House Beef on Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie. We're going to have you stick around for Q&A. So guys, Taylor, is there anything new in for Debbie?
We have 2 questions. I guess we'll just do one now and we can save the last one for the end. But can we find you in any commercial stores like H-E-B or Kroger or anything? We have to buy directly from you.
So from me, we do have some local restaurants and butcher shops in Kern County that you can find us in. But as far as throughout the Midwest and outside of California, you would have to purchase directly from us. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll save the seasoning question for the end.
I see that. Okay, I'm ready for it after your demo.
So I'm going to ask Sam Hickey join us. I know all of you backyard grill masters are already aware of the social media icon and YouTube superstar, Sam Hickey. Sam's getting his microphone on. Sam, hey, thanks for joining.
What's up, James?
Have a seat in the swing.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. So Sam's place is where we're at today, and it is just chock full of every grilling and grilling accessory you could ever want. You're located up here in Spring, right, north side of Houston, and I can't drive by this area of town without stopping in and seeing what's new and different grills and all the accessories. So Sam, give a little introduction to you and the place here.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, no problem.
So Sam Hickey, owner of Creekstone Outdoor Living, got into the business by building outdoor kitchens, patio covers, and backyards, and really developed a passion for grilling and the grilling industry, different products that were coming out. So we designed and built a retail showroom here that we use not only as a retail space for different types of grill products, but also as a showroom for our design build customers that can come in and see the different types of products that we build and design for backyards. So we're a true one-stop shop in the Houston market. If anybody needs a pool, patio, or outdoor kitchen, big green egg, gas grill, charcoal grill, a pellet grill of any sort, come and see us.
Awesome. Great introduction. Thank you. We're going to pivot to a quick tour of the facility. This video and this part of the engagement is intended to feel like you're in our backyard at this point. So our hope is that if you're not comfortable, get comfortable. If you're at home, grab a beer. If you want to move, now's your time to kind of get situated and comfortable for the remainder of the presentation. So with that, we're going to kick off the video. Is that all right with you?
Sounds good.
Perfect. Taylor, take it away. Taylor, take it away.
Sorry, let me try that again.
So what you're grilling on matters. Here at Creekstone Outdoor Living, we offer a wide variety of grills and smokers to fit anyone's lifestyle. We like to walk through the features and advantages of each particular unit so our customers know what they're buying. We're standing here at one of the most common units, which is a gas or propane model on a cart. Available with interior lighting and knob lights and a variety of features such as griddle inserts, smoker trays, charcoal inserts, this grill can be your everyday cooker. However, we wouldn't necessarily promote this for your traditional barbecue like brisket or ribs. For traditional Texas barbecue, most people are going to think about an offset smoker or a barrel pit, similar to this one here. Not nearly as convenient as a gas grill, a user will build a live fire using wood and charcoal in the offset chamber to manage temperature and smoke in the indirect chamber, allowing you to cook brisket, ribs, turkeys, or any other traditional Texas barbecue. You can also cook steaks over live fire in the firebox, but personally, I think there's a better solution. Like a pellet grill, this one here by Yoder Smokers combines the convenience of gas and the flavor of wood. By using a compressed wood pellet fuel, turning on the power and setting the temperature, you can grill or smoke everything from steaks to briskets on this one grill. Some of the things that we really like about this Yoder pellet grill is a wide temperature range from 150 to 600, the ability to open up the firebox to direct sear a steak, and Wi-Fi connectivity to monitor or control the temperature. The last type of cooker we want to highlight here today at Creekstone is a ceramic Kamado style, also known as the Big Green Egg. The longest lasting and most versatile grill on the market, using lump charcoal, you can grill a steak at 600 degrees, or you can smoke a brisket on one load of lump charcoal for up to 20 hours. And it just so happens we're cooking a couple of steaks on the Big Green Egg today.
That was great, Sam. What a good video.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, you share the name of the video guy you use. That's wonderful.
Chris with Muletop Media.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That was a lot of information about 4 different types of grills. There's got to be more than just 4, right?
For the most part, that's the 4 types that you're going to hit.
4
Yeah.
general types. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So everyone's going to go to their backyard and they're going to see what they have in their backyard and they're going to throw these steaks on. And what I just heard, you could pull it off with almost anything as long as there's a heat source.
Correct.
So I'm personally a fan of the Big Green Egg. Everything I do as James from Steak Farm is typically going to be on that Big Green Egg. What do you have in your backyard?
I have a gas grill, pellet grill, and a Big Green Egg.
Oh man, how do you decide?
It's tough. It's tough. Every day's a new adventure when I'm cooking.
Too good. So guys, if you have questions right now about what you have and what steaks might be best on which, go ahead and plug them in. We're going to talk about it here for just a second though. And we're about to introduce the concept of a reverse sear. Before we show up what the reverse sear is, talk about what other options people might go out and do. They could flash sear it, right? Just go straight out.
So you can go out and light your fire, whether it's gas or charcoal, and throw your steak down and cook it direct over fire until you get the doneness that you want.
There's even some people I'm seeing on the internet, I don't know if you go there ever, they throw it straight on the coal.
Yep, caveman.
Caveman.
Yep.
Any idea what they're doing with that?
Yeah, just cooking direct heat, getting a good crust on that. You brush the ash off after it's done cooking, and you're getting a good crust on the steak.
Would you recommend that with any cut?
No, you're probably going to want a thicker cut like a ribeye or a New York strip.
Okay. And then the thinner cuts, a couple of the thinner cuts in the box that came out are that outside skirt. I think a few boxes may have had an inside skirt. There's a flank steak in there. Those thinner cuts, you would treat them different.
Yeah, you're going to go hot and fast. You just want to flip them maybe after a minute, minute and a half on each side, depending on how what doneness you want.
Okay, perfect. Well, Taylor, unless there's a question.
Yeah, we do have a question actually.
Well, go ahead. What is the question?
Yeah, we have one question. Sam, James, you can answer too. What are your thoughts on the master-built gravity charcoal smoker?
See, gravity smokers or something else.
Yeah, so that's a new charcoal style grill. You're loading the charcoal from the top, and as it burns, it's just basically refilling as it burns down. So it's kind of a hybrid between charcoal and pellet grill.
Yep.
So you're getting the convenience similar of a pellet grill, but still getting the smoke and flavor of a charcoal grill.
Yeah, so until recently, a lot of the pellet smokers didn't really give the same option for real high heat. In fact, Those who are early adopters of pellet smokers, many of them have thrown theirs out either for higher end newer pellets or for something where they can do an extreme high heat like the Big Green Egg or a Komodo style ceramic. With this auger that they're talking about, the auger that feeds the pellets, that was a mechanical churn of pellets that's going to continue to feed the fire and fuel it. With the gravity fed, it's leveraging gravity. So theoretically, it should cost a little bit less than a pellet fed. It shouldn't have as much machinery to break. Should be easy to repair if it were to break, because you're leveraging gravity. On the other hand, it may be hard to get those high heats for sears and good steaks. That's the tough part. I recently went through my own transition from a large egg. I then looked at the market, thought I was going to buy a refrigerator style upright smoker, and ended up buying an extra large egg. I stayed at what I was comfortable with, but I did so because you can't cook a steak or fajitas on a traditional smoker. The heat's just not right. The source isn't right for it. Someone on here is probably going to chime in and say, I can do that. Yeah, so it can be done. Don't get me wrong. It's just not the way I like it. Kind of like IT, because I'm right doesn't mean you're wrong. Sometimes there's more than one way to set things up. So there's more than one way to cook a steak as well. What other questions, Taylor? Any others?
That's actually it for now.
Cool. Do you want to hit us with the first video?
Yes, we'll jump into the cooking of the steaks.
Second video. Thank you. Oh, hey, Sam, you're back. This can wait. You already showed them all the grills?
Yes, we did.
Even the big green one?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, so we've already pulled out 3 of the steaks from the box that we're shipping out to everybody. The ribeye, the outside skirt, and the flat iron steak. How do you want to start this?
Great looking cuts of meat. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to spray all 3 of them down with duck fat to use as a binder for our rubs. On the ribeye, we're going to do a reverse sear. And to get that great crust, we're going to use hardcore carnivore black. So if you don't have duck fat at home, just use an olive oil. We want to get a good coverage on the whole steak. Try to get the sides as well.
All right, Sam, that looks great. What next?
Awesome. Let's season these steaks. First one, the bone-in ribeye with the hardcore carnivore black. I tend to hold this up a little bit higher so I can get good even coverage across the whole surface of the steak. So we're just going to do a nice, good, even coverage across the whole surface.
That carnivore black sure is dark.
Get this flipped over. This is going to give us a great crust across the surface of the steak, which is the flavor that we're going to look for. Try to get it on the sides as well. There we go. Next, we're going to do the 8-second ride on the skirt steak. Same thing, we don't really have to deal with the sides on this one. We're going to hold it up a little higher, get a good even coverage.
What's in that that's different than that hardcore carnivore black you used?
This is going to have a little spice to it. It's got a little, you can see the red chili pepper flakes in it. Just to give us, skirt steak is traditionally used more for taco meat or fajita meat. So this is just going to have a little bit more spice to it. There we go. All right. And the flat iron, we're going to go with a our beef rub, which is, again, a more traditional steak rub, salt, pepper, and garlic primarily. Again, hold it up high, get a good even coverage over the surface of the steak. Flat iron tends to be a little thinner cut, so we don't have to worry about the sides as much.
So now that they're all seasoned, we're gonna head outside and throw them on the grill. Is that right?
Yep, I'll wash up and I'll meet you out there.
Excellent. Right behind you.
Thanks. So James is grabbing the steaks. The first thing we're going to do is a reverse sear with the bone-in cut ribeye. We like to do a reverse sear with our thicker cuts of meat. So we're going to take that at 250-degree cooking temperature with our plate setter or convector in place. And we're going to smoke this steak for about 30 minutes or so. We're going to look for an internal temperature of about 115 degrees. And we'll be probing that with our instant read thermometer, which is a great tool to have on hand when you're grilling or smoking. Once that hits 115 degrees, we'll pull it off, plate it, and get the egg set up for a sear. All right, guys, we're back out at the Big Green Egg. Our ribye's been on for about 25 to 30 minutes. We've probed it. We've got an internal temperature about 115 to 120 degrees, which with a reverse sear is the perfect temperature you're looking for if you want to finish out at a medium rare. So we're going to go ahead and pull this steak off and plate it. And then we're going to get our egg temperature up to 550, 600 degrees for a good sear, and we'll cook all 3 steaks at the same time. To get our temperature up to 550 or 600 degrees and cook over live fire, we're going to go ahead and remove the convector and reinstall the grate directly over the coals. And at that point, we're going to open the bottom damper and remove the top.
We lost a few of it.
This is going to allow the maximum airflow to get our temperature up north of 500 pretty quick. All right, so now we're ready to sear. We're at north of 600 degrees. I am going to burp the egg, so I'm just cracking it open. First thing we're going to throw on here is our bone-in ribeye. It's our thicker cut, so I'm going to lay that right over the fire. Then I'm going to go ahead and start with our second thickness cut, which is the flat iron, and then throw on our outside skirt steak. And again, this is hot and fast, north of 600 degrees. We're just getting a good crust on these steaks. About 1.5 minutes on each side. Sitting right at 1 minute. I'm going to go ahead and flip the ribeye here in about 15 seconds. Get a nice good crust on the opposite side. Go ahead and flip that flat iron. And then the skirt. Probably probe the flat iron because it is a little bit thicker. We probably won't be able to probe the skirt. Again, we're looking for 130 to 135. We're sitting at right about 100. 130 internal. And the ribeye is ready to come off. One key thing we haven't mentioned yet, we always want to let these steaks rest for 5 to 10 minutes before slicing. We're at 120 on the flat iron. The skirt's probably ready to come off. Just another 30 seconds or a minute on this fire and this flat iron's going to be ready. And we're at 130. Shut our egg down. And we'll let them rest for a few minutes and slice them up.
Hey, Sam, what'd you bring me?
Check this out.
Oh, man, unbelievable. They're already done?
Yeah, man. Slice them up.
I will. Let me get my fork. There it is. Well, guys, what you're going to look for in each of these different cuts of meat is the grain and which way the grain flows in the meat. You want to cut against the grain, not just in these steaks, but in any meat at all you're cutting for it to be as tender as possible. So just for the sake of showing you in the most clear fashion, we're going to use this skirt steak because you can see it still, the camera, on exactly where that grain's flowing. So in this case, and remember, all meat's different, we're going to want to serve it sliced this way. But a length of cut this long might be too much for one tortilla, especially if you're serving this up in fajitas. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this into a couple of pieces. 1, 2, and I'm gonna turn it 90 degrees, and I'm gonna cut this down the line against the grain. Now, I don't know who else is watching you cook, but if you have anyone around you, this is the time that you go ahead and take one of these end pieces and you offer it up to someone off camera. You're welcome. And then you start cutting the next line. Now, some grain is easier to recognize than others. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next steak. Next will be the flat iron. All right, so now that we're finished with the outside skirt steak, it's probably good to mention that there's 2 different kinds of skirt steak, an outside and an inside skirt steak. That outside skirt steak should be more tender than the inside. It's often sold at restaurants and you can't really find it at grocery stores. Same thing with the flat iron. So let me move this ribeye aside for a second. The flat iron comes from the front part of the cow, the shoulder area, which is usually a pretty tough part. Oftentimes that area is sold as roasts, but your good butchers that are selling beef locally, they're able to actually get you some pretty good cuts. The flat iron's one of those. So on this one, the grain ran this way. Oftentimes I serve these up where I just cut them into medallions and then leave them out for the group to eat. This is great as an appetizer steak if it's small. This one in particular is a bit on the small side, and you can leave that out with some other crackers or chips or cheeses. Or if you're like me and really like steak, you can end up hitting that a couple times, getting some salt, pouring it out, and then eat this at home alone, just having a steak by yourself. That's what I do, both, Sam. Our last steak we're going to cut into is that bone-in ribeye we've been talking about from the beginning. That ribeye is the most popular cut out there. Oftentimes people don't get it bone-in, and that's a bit unique. So let's talk about this cut for a second. This comes from the rib section of the cow. You have a lot of different good cuts that come from that area. Oftentimes you might go to a restaurant and order prime rib. That's just this cut stood up straight, and they're going to slice it off the end. You often get that medium rare. This will be a medium rare cook as well. So it should taste every bit as good as that and the experience you've had before eating a prime rib with this steak. I mentioned this one's bone-in. Pretty good chance y'all seen tomahawk steaks. There's no difference between this and a tomahawk steak. That tomahawk's gonna have the rib bone running out a bit longer. Now that looks cool. It doesn't fit in your barbecue pit real well, but it's the same cut of meat on the end of that long bone. So what you're gonna do here is first feel for that bone, find it, and then carve it out. And as that carves out, you have 2 options. You can either gnaw on this end, which is very good, or if you have a really good dog, your dog will love it. Next, you have a little piece that's going to fall off the edge here. That's a cut in itself. Someone's going to eat that. Don't discard it. Not for the dog. And then you're going to simply just put about 1/2 inch to 1 inch size slices the entire way through. The grain on this cut is a bit circular, so you're going to want to continue to move with it in a kind of a fan form, but not too aggressive, just a little bit. And then you're going to do what we did earlier with that skirt steak, and you're going to hand that end piece off to a good friend.
Yes, you are.
Let them take advantage of some of that sweetness that came off the pit earlier. And then y'all probably all watched the internet to find Salt Bay before. You tap it out a couple times, grab a handful of salt, and you sprinkle it all on. Don't have the salt today, but you can do that on your own. All right, guys, this is ready to serve. So depending on how you want to do it, you can have people come by and just pull off a piece of meat and add it to their plate. Or if you had an individual steak per person, you can now scoop that up, plate their plates for them, and get them going. All right, so that's the end of this steak. You've got all 3 now cooked and ready prepared. Hey, Sam.
Hi, James.
Should we go back live?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, guys. Okay, we changed between shots. Well, at least I did. Sam still smells like smoke. But that should give you all a pretty good sense of how to treat some of those. I think the most important thing to take away from it likely is the concept of the reverse sear. It's an extremely popular and very common way of cooking thicker steaks today. If you're going to do so, the temperature can't be too low, really. almost any low temp, 200, 180, 230, anything in that range is going to slowly get the internal temperature of the meat up to a certain point. And then it's up to you. This is where the art kind of comes in. You get to decide when you want to pull that meat off and spike that temperature up so that you can begin to get a really good sear on it. Depending on the steak and the thickness of it, I recommend you make some decisions there. The box we sent you doesn't have anything too thick, but one day you might get a wild hair and go to Costco, or maybe you call Debbie at Red House and go ahead and get a good 3-inch thick tomahawk steak. And if you do so, consider the reverse sear, and then get that temperature up to 700, maybe 900 degrees, and from about an internal temp of 100 to 130, just sear it as hard as it'll go. Recommendation on that, you're going to want to hear a sizzle sound every time you flip it over. So if you're going to pull off the sizzle, you might want to make sure the grate is really clean. And then you flip it over, it'll sizzle real nice. Clean the grate where the meat just was. In addition to that, you're going to want to continue to flavor it. Otherwise, you risk it to be burnt and the process not work correctly. I recommend any compound butter just melted. Typically, I'll take a coffee mug, put some butter in it, some garlic, maybe just the same steak seasoning I used on the steak, and then I'll baste it every time I flip it over. There's a scientific reaction called the Maillard reaction that happens when sugars and amino acid reach high heats. They combine together into one, and that's the sear flavor that people brag about and get. It's not a burnt flavor, it's a sear that changes when that science reaction occurs. And again, you get that reaction by adding the additional butter and other flavors and putting it on a clean grate. So great example, Sam, on showing the reverse sear on that bone and ribeye. Any other recommendations or tools you recommend? You have anything around the house you love to use?
Well, the instant read thermometer, a set of high temperature gloves, obviously both of those are extremely important. If you're using an egg, and doing long, low and slow cooks that we haven't really talked about here, they do make a controller, so you can use that controller to control the egg with a Wi-Fi connectivity. So all of those tools are really popular.
That makes it really easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a couple in the house that we come back to every time that we have guests over. They ask about what are those two tools. One is a meat tenderizer called a 48-pin meat tenderizer. You might be familiar with the hammer meat tenderizer. Those are good for some cuts of meat, but typically you're not going to want to pound on a steak that way. The 48-pin is what it sounds like. It's 48 pins, and you can hit the meat with that. It creates a lot of porous holes. You can end up getting a lot of flavor into the meat that way. Us IT guys might joke that's the pen test that we put our meat through. But for those that are just looking for a good steak, highly recommend you use the 48-pin meat tenderizer. The other one's a pigtail. Pigtail is a long metal rod with a small hook at the end. And you can flip the fajita meat or thinner cuts really easy with that. For one, you don't get a gloved hand on it, which means you're not losing seasoning from the friction of your hand touching it. And then two, tongs sometimes pull the same issue or slip when you try to grab a thin cut of meat. So I really like a pigtail. So if you were looking for good Father's Day gifts ideas to tell your family, a 48-pin, a meat tenderizer, some good gloves for the pit, or a instant read thermometer are all great recommendations. You can get just about all that here at Creekstone Outdoor Living in Spring, Texas. What's the address again?
3555 Rayford Road.
Perfect. So Taylor, let me send it back to you for a minute. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have some questions and lots of comments on y'all's acting and how great it was. Someone even said you're made for TV.
Sam, obviously.
Yeah, James.
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, so questions on seasoning. What seasoning should we use? Is traditional salt and pepper work? Debbie, do you have a preference on your beef in particular? Any opinions on that?
So I think that you'll find, and you guys, James, you guys tell me if you found the same. I think traditionally in a grass-fed meat, and maybe it's the moisture content that's a little different than the corn-fed, stands up really well to salt. You can really season. I think it's harder to over season or harder to over salt it. So I love the hardcore carnivore that he used in the dark. That's a great seasoning that I love, and I love we kind of custom made off of his seasoning. I love the coffee and the salt flavor with a little bit of that sugar. So we have kind of our own custom blend we do here. That's the basis with like a coarse sea salt, a little bit of a brown sugar, and a coffee base.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on this one?
Well, absolutely. So salt and pepper obviously going to be your go-to. You can't go wrong with just, coarse sea salt and a black pepper. The hardcore carnivore black has a little activated charcoal and a little bit of sugar in it, so you're going to get that great caramelization, great crust on the surface of the steak. So it's probably our most popular rub that we offer in-house. Secondarily to that, you've got Meat Church Holy Cow, which is a traditional, very similar to the our beef rub. That's the salt, pepper, and garlic.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree on the salt, pepper, garlic SPG. For those of y'all who read too much on the internet, it's been shortened to SPG. If you see people, if you go searching on your own and they're recommending SPG, don't try to find that as a brand. They're just talking about salt, pepper, and garlic. I definitely early in my love of barbecuing and steaks went to an academy once and said, I'm looking for SPG, and I certainly thought it was a brand name. Don't be like me. Let me learn from my mistake. The other thing I'll give you a hint on is the nicer the cut of meat, the higher the quality, the more it'll stand up to a salt bath the night before you cook. This has got an interesting debate going right now. Aaron Franklin of Franklin Barbecue released a steak book. He recommends anywhere from 4 to 24 hours before you cook your steak that you coat it in salt, put it in the refrigerator uncovered. I really like this. This extracts a lot of the moisture in the steak, and then you pat it dry. Add your own binding agent. We use duck fat in the video, and then the seasoning you apply will stick much better, and you'll be able to manipulate the flavor better. In the case of what I was describing with the baste and the compound butter, that'll be the flavor that steak absorbs back in. Some say that sounds a little bit strange. Why would you want to do that? If you are looking into dry aging steaks, putting a steak in a cold controlled temperature and having the moisture extracted from it is exactly what steak aging is. So this is just kind of the poor man's version of starting that process and then leveraging the moisture extraction to your advantage for flavor. So that's my personal preference. What's that one?
James, the dry aging is a good point you brought up too, because I think most people that purchase in the grocery store would find wet aged beef. You don't find a lot of dry aged beef unless you're going and requesting it. We do dry age everything, so everything is about a 21-day dry age for us.
Yeah, that's probably a whole nother question. If someone hasn't asked it yet, they might be typing it. Steak restaurants always offer different ranges of time for how long something's been aged. I've had a lot of friends, and in fact, my family tell me that dry-aged steaks, when you buy them at a restaurant, taste funky or a bit gamey. Can you talk about why that is?
Yeah, so I think it picks up a lot of like the bone and the enzymatic process versus the wet aging. It can also be the diet the animal was on, as it picks up more of that in the fat, because the fat's really where like the so-called funk. Some like it, some taste that as an off taste, but the fat's really where that funk is. And those really like high fat, long dry age can tend to maybe penetrate more of that. You'll also get that when you're versus hand cutting versus a lot of mechanical cutting, because then when you're aging, you get a lot of the bone and fat spurs over the meat, which changes the flavor. There's a lot of reasons why, but it basically is it's a drying molding process that breaks down the enzymes within the beef. And if you've ever walked in a long dry age or it's really cool. A lot of steak restaurants now are showing it. A lot of home dry agers, things like that. You can see that. I mean, it's kind of a molding process is really what it is. If it's done wrong and it's done in a cooler who has like, say, venison hanging or pork, it'll also pick up those other animals, or if it's touching something. So it's really important that your processor have a well humidity controlled, and you're not aging with like a lot of other game because you will pick up the flavor of the smell and what's in that dry aging cooler.
Is there a bell curve? Is there a length of time where eventually it's no longer good to age it? 7 years?
You know, I'll be honest. 7 to 10 days for most cuts is plenty. That's plenty of dehydration, plenty of the process. The middles, like your rib, your New York strip, or your tenderloin, those are about the only ones that added time are really going to affect. Most people break it out and re-rack the ribs and continue to dry age them and cut everything else. Your chucks, your ground beef, all you're doing is losing product because you're going to have to trim it away. I don't think you're changing or bettering the product. You're just making a more expensive chuck roast that's smaller is all you're doing in that process. I think after 21 to 28 days, I've had them, we've taken it out to 60 to play around. I've never gone past that. I'm not sure I see an added benefit. It does get stronger the longer you go, and you lose a lot of yield. So I'm kind of, I mean, some people would say I'm full of it or like totally hate that I say this, but I think after 21, 28 days, you're paying for something on the label.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
don't know
So
if you agree or disagree with me.
no, I don't disagree at all. I think if you go to a restaurant, you ought to question, especially if they have two different ones, like one aged 28 days and one aged much longer. Why at that point? Why'd they do that? I would just say, holy cow. Cow. All right. So
All right.
that was great, Taylor. What other questions?
Yeah. So big question. I feel like maybe question of the day: Wagyu beef or Angus beef? What's the debate? Is it real? What do we do?
How about yes to all? Go ahead, Debbie. This is you.
Oh man, we've raised some Wagyu. So here's, as I'll put my producer hat on first. They're very costly. You got to take them really big. They take a long time. There is a reason they're expensive. They're expensive to make. My problem with it, you don't go to the store and you don't find a Wagyu chuck roast or a Wagyu flat iron, some of those cuts. Why? The roasts are not very good. There's so much intense, strong intermuscular fat. Like it's more fat than it is meat when it's cut out. The Lays, the ribeyes, the New Yorks are beautiful, but I think it's a little bit overrated as a trend, although I have had some great Wagyu. I do like the ground beef because I like fat in my ground beef. So I do love when we make Wagyu ground beef. But maybe because I'm an Angus breeder as well, I'm pretty partial that it's very hard day in, day out to be Angus.
Yeah, y'all are more of a nose to tail operation, right? So
Yeah,
y'all have to find ways to
matters.
use 100%.
Yeah.
Whereas a Wagyu might find that challenging.
Yeah. I don't find that a lot of people who want to pay, $100+ for a roast that's mainly gobby fat when it all shrinks down and it's very, the broth and stuff's very thick on it. So for me, they're not, they're a great novelty item, not something we produce. They're also, if you've ever seen them, they're not a beautiful animal to raise. They're very ugly. They have a little bit of a dairy cow look mixed in with the Angus. Like they're not. They kind of have a funky head. I don't know. So as a producer, I'm an Angus person all the way.
Debbie, don't shame those cows.
I know. But like I said, I've had some tremendous. We actually just were in the Oklahoma area, and we had Mahogany Prime serve a tremendous Wagyu strip that was excellent. So
good question, Taylor. What's another one?
Yeah. So Debbie, are you guys dry aging the carcasses and then have them processed into cuts, or are primals taken off the carcass and then aged?
Who asked this? I want to know that person. Send me a text on the side. We're gonna hang out.
That's a great question.
That's from Derek.
So, everything for us is dry aged on quarters. So our processor breaks it into quarters because of his rail height. And so everything is dry aged that length of time. The only time that I custom age anything else is if I have a specific butcher shop request for a certain primal that they want something custom done. I will do that occasionally, but Everything is dry aged on the entire quarter.
For the group, explain what primal means.
So when they break it into a primal, you're going to have, well, your shirt. Let's look at your shirt. There's basically the group of primals. Like so you kind of talk about an 8-bone or a little bit more than that. And it breaks down like your chalk, your round, your plate, your, your middles into your loin, some of that. So it's going to basically you're going to split in half. You're going to go to quarters at like the 12th, 13th rib area, the ribeye. You're going to break that rib that goes to short ribs from your actual rib roasts. And then from there, you're going to break those out into 4 more chunks. So you're going to end up with an 8-bone. After that it becomes cuts.
That was perfect. So yeah, guys, the primals, if you were in a butcher shop, would be would be how the halves are really delivered, right? Like you mentioned, they're delivered in quarters, so they can't just show up with a whole cow. And so the butcher manipulates the primal into the cuts you have, and a lot of times the primal's already cutting through a bunch of muscle, almost forcing the butcher to cut the steaks out in a certain way, say a roast, instead of cutting it into individual steaks. What other questions, Taylor?
So we have one that says, what is your thought on sous vide cooking a steak? I think that's
Is that
how you
Sarah?
say it.
Sarah asked that?
Mike said that.
Oh, Mike. I thought for sure that would have been Sarah at center asking that one.
Thoughts on that?
We have a lot of sous vide customers. That's very popular out here in California, because that's one of probably the more common photos I get back is everybody will send me photos. The jacuzzi bath is ready. of like the meat getting ready to go in or floating in it.
So they send you pictures of your meat in Ziploc bags in warm water?
Exactly. It'll have like rosemary, herb butter, all kinds of things. And they always call it the jacuzzi bath. That's like a thing, I guess, out here.
Yeah, so guys, remember I mentioned earlier that just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong, or because I'm right doesn't mean you're wrong. This is a great example of some people preferring one way over another. I don't own a sous vide. My brother-in-law, who taught me most of what I know about barbecue and steaks, he does, and he loves his. So I don't hate him, but that is a different world. Do you have one?
I do. I
You
do.
like it?
It's real similar to a reverse sear. I mean, you're taking the steak up to that constant temperature. It's great if you want to take it. You can have multiple sous vides and have different temperatures going. So if you're cooking for multiple people, in fact, a lot of restaurants will have steaks going with different sous vides at 115 internal, 125, 135. And when you go into a restaurant and order a steak, medium and medium well or well done, they're just pulling from that water bath and then searing them and sending them out. So if you're doing a lot of cooking and you're trying to finish them at different temperatures, it's really a really convenient way to cook.
Good. Taylor, back to you.
Sweet. So maybe last question, unless someone else wants to answer or throw it in the chat. What do we do if we're not the best steak cookers? Like, what grill do we use? What's a good starting place?
Ooh, we're all gonna have an opinion here, I bet.
Yeah, I would start with a gas grill personally. I mean, the gas grill is going to be the most convenient and the easiest to use. Buy a good instant read thermometer, and don't be afraid to probe the steak every couple minutes until you're getting to that internal temp that you're looking for. And finish it off. Try to get it on a high temp sear at the very end, and practice makes perfect.
Yeah, there's an old tradition or belief myth that you shouldn't flip your steaks very often.
Yeah.
It's fine. Flip the steaks, get it to where you want it. The most important thing is that the internal temp is where you wanted it. So if you're only going to buy one tool, I would say that internal thermometer is probably the right one to buy. But don't. Half the fun is practicing a ton.
Absolutely.
And
I think
getting
the
good at it.
thermometer thing. The thermometer thing is a game changer for a lot of like beginners, and I'm glad you guys talked about it, because I get a lot of men who like are anti, like it's like hurts your ego that you would not be able to feel it to know what it is. And my husband's one now that was like, that's what chicks use, and I'm like, well, I'm always more right than you are when I pull mine off. Now he uses the internal thermometer. That's a game changer.
Well, especially if you're cooking great steaks, prime or better, Wagyu, whatever it is. If you're spending the money to pick up a great cut, probing it a couple times with an instant read's kind of a no-brainer in my book. And as far as flipping, Jess Prowls with Hardcore Carnivore came out with the JKF, just keep flipping. So you can flip as many times as you want. It doesn't matter. It won't hurt the steak a bit.
Okay, one more piece of advice would be don't cook it too high of a temp your first round.
Yeah.
Especially if you do that compound butter thing I was talking about. That is going to spike that fire right up. Pretty soon you'll have no arm hair left. You'll be engulfed in flames, questioning everything we ever told you. So I would say try to stick to a 3 to 450 temperature, 300 to 450 on the pit your first round. And yeah, don't worry about flipping and probing and poking at it. Really, don't even worry about cutting into it too early. If you do, all it's going to hurt is plating. And I don't think anyone's going to care once they sit down and eat it and it's cooked right. So that's my advice.
Awesome. Well, I think we're all ready to cook some steaks for sure. And I don't have any other. Oh, wait, one more question just came in. He said,
Quick.
this is a tech group. What are the thoughts on wireless thermometers?
Good question.
We offer the Meter Plus here at Creekstone. They're extremely user friendly. They pair up with your phone very easily. Gives you a constant readout and actually tells you when to pull the steak and plate it and let it rest. So it'll actually tell you to plate it at a certain time. And then additionally, it'll tell you when it's ready to eat. So it's a really convenient way to use if you don't want to sit there and probe with an instant read. The Meter Plus is great. It's really better for thicker cuts like a ribeye or New York strip or a fillet.
But if you're in the barbecue thing too and smoking, this thing's perfect. You can walk away for a long period of time, and then you can go back later and look at some of your other cooks. It keeps a history of how you did on those. So you might think to yourself, I think it took me X amount of time on that brisket, but you can go back and check for sure how long that took. Meter's a good company.
Yep.
A lot of knockoffs of Meter right now too. They're probably just as good. I just haven't used them. All right. So quick wrap up. So many people to thank for making this happen. I heard during one of the videos that more than 100 people have shown up to this. I think we set a record. So if we can use the cliche one more time that, boy, this is unprecedented and these uncertain times. You guys came to play when it came to steaks being shipped to your house and joining from home. So thank you guys for all showing up. Rhonda, thank you for the kind words from Microsoft. Debbie, thanks for spending your whole afternoon with us here. Really appreciate it. And Sam, I wish they could see this place. We have an entire, it looks like a newsroom in here. So thank you for giving us the space to be able to do this today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Now we'll do some like to-go music, right?
Yeah.